Hello everyone and welcome to the final part of our look into the Dyatlov past mysteries. We've looked at most of the evidence now, and so in this episode we're going to be talking about our conclusions and theories about what we think happened. So I hope you enjoy this one, guys, and thank you for listening.
So yeah, about this case. Now the thing is, I've written down a few points I want to talk about. Now, I've mentioned this before, but the investigation was incredibly sloppy at points. Now, the tent and its contents, they were disassembled very soon after finding it, a couple days later. And everything was basically thrown into a big pile. There's pictures of it online. And was flown off to be examined. And there were no pictures of the inside of the tent, stuff like that. It would have been interesting and uh, couldn't be, I don't know, couldn't be possible nowadays. And some items were picked up by the members of the search party and thrown into their own backpacks. So nobody checked if there was blood inside the tent. Nobody checked for fingerprints. Some items of the group could have gotten lost because, like I said, members of the search party just threw the stuff in their own backpacks. Um, Maybe never showed that stuff to anyone. And, maybe there were some things um, I don't know. Maybe there was some clear evidence of what has happened to the group, and that stuff just disappeared. And maybe there's a very logical explanation for everything, but we will never know just because.
Yeah, it's well, part of me thinks obviously at the time things wouldn't be as official and as advanced now as they are now, but also there was a lot of volunteers, so they wouldn't be trained in what they need to do. And on top of
Yeah,
that,
obviously.
it's in pretty harsh conditions, so it's not like they can uh, spend as much time as they wanted to review things, or I don't know, but it's not like a murder down the street and they can just go and have a look and maintain everything exactly as it is for a long time. Um,
Yeah.
and with the snow and things getting covered and melting, yeah, loads of different things could change.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that you need to take into consideration as well. Is what that so that definitely also hindered the investigation and made everything more difficult. But there, I mean, you can't deny that sloppiness that was there.
No, yeah,
Um, that was definitely there. Might it be intentional or not? I don't know. Maybe they were just, innocently sloppy. I have no idea. So yeah, the also another thing is the items of the hikers were just reused by the searchers and their, like the ski poles to look for people, and also the cameras of the group was used in the, to photograph their bodies in
oh
the,
right, okay.
you know, yeah. So that's kind of something that couldn't be done nowadays. Nobody would take your camera if they find you and just take pictures of yourself
Yeah,
with that camera while examining you. Um, but that was quite common back then, just to mention that. So I'm not blaming them; they're trying their best.
yeah, probably.
um, Another thing is the investigation was immediately closed 1 month after the last bodies were found in June 1959, which is very fast, given that there's so many things that were weird about this case and nobody could quite tell what happened.
Well, it was
And
closed,
nowadays,
but in as what? What was the official closure?
accident.
Yeah, fine. Okay.
Yeah, the resolution was. I mean, people said, yeah, well, must have been an accident, tragic accident, no crime involved, nothing. And I think, yeah, maybe it was an accident, but I'd like to have some further explanation of that accident.
Doesn't
Um,
sound like an accident to me.
yeah, I mean, it could be one under specific circumstances. I mean, let's just not discuss the eyes for a second. But if you can't be sure that it's for sure an accident, and you can't um, kind of say certain that nobody else was involved, then you just don't close a case, right? I don't know.
That's what how I thought it worked, but again, you're not a
I
police
mean,
officer.
also different times, different, yeah,
Yeah,
era.
because
Now the next, yep.
if there was an accident, I I don't understand. Like, I'm assuming that the route they took away from the tent wasn't the way that they came from. Uh, so, like, if there was an accident and they're like, "Oh god, our tent's ruined, we've lost our
Mhm.
gear," wouldn't they just go back exactly the way they came? Um,
maybe the next day, maybe that happened during the night and they just tried to look for shelter.
That's a good point, yeah. Because I suppose you would realise you can't make it very far, so
Yeah.
you'd try and find a safe place for shelter. Yeah, okay.
Also, I mean, another thing I wanted to say. Yeah, and also, I mean, if it was an accident, let's say, if you can classify that as accident, if let's say that those rib fractures and stuff like that were caused by a bomb. Don't know if that counts as an accident.
No.
Let's assume. Let's assume it is an accident. I mean, accidentally there was a bomb. Experience, blah blah, military experience. That's a common theory. Let's say there was an accident, like whoops, we didn't know that hikers would be there at that point. How do eyes get missing from that? I don't know how that works. Do bomb shock waves just catapult your eyes out of your eye sockets?
I
I'm
don't
sorry
know.
for the graphical explanation, but
No, it's a good point. I don't know.
do they just? I mean,
But
the shock wave. Do you
yeah,
just press that out, or inside
no
make them
idea.
pop? I don't know. Okay, it's getting ridiculous. I don't know.
So what stage are we at? Do you want me to talk about what I think could have happened?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Give me your explanation.
Well, I know exactly what happened, Jane.
Wow. Okay. Well, we've all been waiting for that moment.
They took they were having a party to celebrate old matey's birthday, and they took some psychedelic drugs, and
Oh my god.
then they all went crazy, ripped themselves out of the tent without all their gear, and started scratching their eyes out and ripping bits of clothes off. Then they died.
How come they had those weird rib fractures?
From the drugs.
Mm-hmm. That's another common theory, actually. So you're not.
Oh,
Yeah.
someone said that. Okay, because
Someone said
I
that.
didn't think.
Yeah.
I don't mean that really. Really, I was half joking, but while you were talking through things, I thought, well, what sort of things make people go crazy? And sometimes there are some types of drugs that people take and have certain reactions where they will kill other people accidentally or without just completely losing their minds, kind of thing. And just by some of the behavior, like ripping themselves out of the tent, running off into the cold without the proper clothing and stuff, suggests that they could have been out of their minds. Is kind of one suggestion, but I don't see that either. It seems very far fetched, to be honest.
I mean, everything probably is far fetched in this case. Let's be real. I do live by Occam's razor and the simplest explanation. uh, I go with the simplest explanation, but there is just no simple explanation for this case that would cover every piece of evidence. And that's the mistake that the investigators made back then. Is like they went with this Occam's razor theory and just yeah, but they didn't take into consideration that some evidence was just not further explained or just
Yeah,
didn't make any sense. And I mean, like shrooms, some people suggested that theory, and I could somehow potentially see how somebody might have. But on the other hand, those were experienced hikers. Don't you think that they would know what they're eating?
yeah, most
I don't
likely.
think they would do that on purpose. They were quite mature and experienced and
Yeah,
knew that if they ate something weird or got intoxicated somehow, that would be a great threat for them. And I don't believe they would have done that. If they would have, um, then I could see them getting out the tent, being having a psychotic episode or something like that from the shrooms, being afraid, um, and also wandering off into different directions, doing weird things like climbing a tree and stuff like that.
yeah,
But and also could see somebody falling, down a ravine where the last four bodies were found, and potentially breaking their ribs. But I can see how, um, I don't know how the bodies ended up being over the creek then. Like they would have surely be placed next to a ravine or a cliff,
yeah,
and they must have all fallen on top of each other to cause such an injury where the ribs are broken in such a way. That's the only way I could explain such an injury, and that's where but if somebody would have to just recreate that somehow with 3D models or animate it, see if it's physically possible to fall down a cliff and all the others on top of you, and if that would cause ribs to break like that. I don't know.
Probably could do.
Could be, maybe. But how would they lose their eyes? I mean, I've heard of some woman somewhere who actually on drugs, I don't know which one she took, maybe LSD, don't know, don't quote me on that. And she did in fact rip her eyes out in front of a church. I've read that somewhere. That's true.
Yeah.
So those things do happen. But I mean, but if you have a trip, a bad trip on drugs like that, not all of them have a bad trip, and not all of them have the same trip. So, um, just because one is ripping her eyes out maybe doesn't mean that somebody else is doing the same.
No. Well, I also
So,
thought about maybe a bear coming into their tent, but I don't know whether one, whether there are actual bears in that area, and two, they would be hibernating during that period anyway. So
and also,
maybe
yeah, and I'd assume
wolves or something.
no wolf tracks were found though.
Yeah, but I don't understand this whole tracks thing. That's really confusing because like,
Yeah.
I don't see how on the top of a mountain in February, 3 weeks later, the tracks would still be there. I don't see how that would happen. But
But would you run away if you heard a wolf outside?
no, no. Well, if the wolf came in the tent, so maybe if they smelt
The food,
food,
yeah.
yeah, there could have been a pack of them there. That's very odd behavior, right, for them to come into the tent. Because what
Yeah.
I'm struggling with a little bit is why what's the need to escape from a tent? What is the need to escape from the tent by cutting it open and running out? Something has to have come in, be blocking the front door and be threatening them enough. But
Yeah.
I don't think you would cut your way out of the tent without somebody else in the group of being like killed or stabbed or shot first. Like the panic would be you wake up and you see somebody in the tent that shouldn't be there. There's nine of them in the tent. They would be able to overpower one person.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think there's much room for more than just one entering the tent.
yeah,
I think it was pretty crammed.
so they would have to have had a knife or a gun, and in which case I would have thought that somebody would have been injured within the tent, and then it would have been obvious that there'd been some kind of assault there. Um, the other thing is
No,
they could have been because you said in some of the autopsy that they looked like bruising around somebody's ankles. They might have actually
mm-hmm,
been held captive in the tent.
mm-hmm.
So they could have been in there for any period of time really, and then managed to find an escape by cutting through the
But
tent. But
I think, I mean, if let's say somebody approaches the tent and is outside the front entrance of the tent, and let's assume they are pointing a gun at them and order them to. I would assume they would order them to come out because that's easier to keep control of them. I think because if you're having them in the tent, I mean, why would you? You want something from the people you want to assault, I assume, and so you'd probably order them to get out of the tent, and also to keep better control over them, because otherwise, someone in the tent could easily just, without anybody noticing, grabbing a knife and attacking the one person or many person outside.
yeah, and
So they'd probably order them to come outside, but probably through the front entrance, right?
yes,
Unless somebody inside the tent still was like, nope, I'm gonna find a different exit, and was
but
like, I don't wanna, you know.
but
But
then
I think it's
even if
quite
they
far
did,
fetched.
even if they did cut their way out of the tent, they
Somebody
don't
would have noticed.
they don't get a head start on somebody at the front of the tent because they just sort of step around the side and go, "Where are you going?"
Yeah, exactly.
And they all ran in the same direction, so it's not like they just scattered everywhere. So whoever was causing this um, trauma or whatever, why didn't they pursue them? Or maybe they did pursue them. I don't know. But if they did pursue them, why was everybody found in different areas? Uh, and
Yeah.
why were they even being uh, pursued in the first place?
Well, some people say there are theories out there pointing to the KGB, and a lot of people believe that, even the families. And well, they know that the KGB was capable of doing something like that because they lived in that era. And I mean, there are a lot of spooky stories about secret agencies and stuff like that. But especially the KGB, they were sketchy, and things like that could definitely happen. I could see that happening. But the thing is that people kind of sometimes went overboard with that theory. For example, I'm going to give you an example. There is a picture that I'm going to show you now. That was one of the last pictures on one of the cameras. And, the author of the book I've read, they were doing some very questionable investigations. They zoomed into that picture, and I mean, can you tell anything from that picture? What the person is wearing or anything or having on them? I think it's quite difficult to tell, right?
To me, that just looks like they've got a hood over their head. Can't
So
see
yeah, it
anything.
looks like maybe a ski mask, one of those
Yeah,
balaclavas, military things.
yeah.
And now the thing is, that author, they zoomed in and were like, well, it's clear, and that's what I didn't like, that the wording. It's clear that they have a holster with a weapon on their left side of the waist.
I can
It's
kind of
also
see
clear,
that, but not clearly, obviously.
too, there is something darker, but it could be anything.
Yeah, could be the light.
Also, yeah, they see a badge of some sort, like as if it belongs to officials, on the left chest. And what also irritates me is, they dressed, they made an effort to dress a GI Joe figure, um, in the same thing, and also putting like something like a ski mask on them, and then blurred the picture, and I was like, see, my GI Joe has a weapon, and it looks exactly the same. I'm like, yeah, put a banana in that holster, and it
Yeah.
looks exactly the same. It's not that hard. And
So
also, the balaclava, the author said nobody in the group is ever seen with that thing on their head. And I'm like, not true, because balaclavas were found in between the layers of clothing on multiple bodies. So they had those.
yeah, I mean,
And
it seems very likely they would have a balaclava. Who took
yeah,
this
and
photo, by the
also
way? What was this taken from? This is from the
that
cameras.
was that was the camera, I believe, from Nikolai Thibault Brignol. I think it was from his camera.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, of course it could be somebody they ran into, sure, but um, I don't think it's possible to tell who it is just by the photo, and saying it is for sure an official just because of that picture. It could be,
So,
but
I mean,
I don't think there's evidence.
if it was the KGB, why? I mean, they would do a much better job of disposing of the bodies, I'm sure.
Hmm.
Why would they do it right at the, like in this place here? Why did they could have done it any place along the trail, probably a lot earlier than this? Why did they go in such a remote area? Um,
Now here's the theory that so many people believe is not just KGB, but just some secret agency stuff. Is now here's the theory. People think, I told you to remember that incident where Georgi was arrested. People
yes.
think that since he and others were working at like nuclear plants, that they wanted to give some samples, like some radioactive material, to spies from the CIA. Now it sounds adventurous, but I mean, could be. I don't know how times were, and also just keep in mind that that was a time where the great rocket race was taking place. Where everyone tried to be better than the other nation,
Yeah.
rocket wise. So maybe, and also they say that when Georgi was arrested, one of them who worked in a nuclear plant, he actually made a phone call to somebody telling them that everything is as planned and they're on their way, something like that, because the phones on the in the police stations were often the only secure ones, something like that. And also that later on there was a second incident where a drunk guy accused him of stealing the vodka and money, and so people think that that was a code word for message received. We've heard you. I don't know, that's a bit adventurous, I don't believe that part. So they're saying that they were spies, double spies, that were supposed to bring some radioactive material to some CIA agents, but were actually double spies, and the KGB knew about this whole ordeal and this whole situation. And the CIA found out, and that's why they killed the group. That's their theory. I think it has many flaws, to be honest. Like, for
Mm.
example, in the book, the author, for example, completely says disregards the theory about military and says no because they would have just shot them. But in the KGB theory that the author totally believes in, they say, well, they can't shoot them obviously because they wouldn't want to draw attention to them. And I'm like, why wouldn't the military do the same then? And I mean, surely spies want to be undiscovered, but I don't know. I think it's just a bit. And also, why make. I think it was a common practice, apparently, to make people freeze if you just wanted to get rid of them. But why didn't they do that to all of them? Just tie them up and let them freeze and then remove the ropes and then just scatter them around and make it look like they froze
Yeah,
instead of maybe crushing somebody's ribs and taking their eyes out.
yeah. That taking their eyes out thing is very strange. Um,
Like I said, every theory has some part where it doesn't make sense. Uh, the fighting, though, I mean, it would mean that somebody fought back. So maybe I don't know if you would fight back against some people with guns, and surely CIA agents would have guns or
well,
military. And I don't think back in the day people would fight the military. I don't think so.
no, but I think that kind of ties in with the escape from the tent. It's kind of like maybe there was a struggle, and that's when they decided to escape. Um, because I don't really see any other scenario that, like, they're
I mean,
fighting without any clothes on and then running
yeah,
away. It doesn't make any sense.
nothing
But
makes.
they might have, just because they had guns, if they felt like they're gonna die, then they probably would try and fight. They'd probably try anything. Um, if it was obvious they were going to be killed, maybe they would try something like that. But
Yeah,
I
but if
just
somebody's pointing a gun at you, don't you? Wouldn't you just stand still and hope that they take whatever they need and or want and leave you alone, or maybe arrest you and spare your life?
Yeah, absolutely. You would just stand there and do nothing. But there might be a point where it's maybe they'd already strangled somebody else to death, and it was pretty
Mm.
clear that they were going to kill all of them. At that point, maybe they would do a large ditch kind of um, escape
People
from the tent.
suggest that some of them were tortured to get some information out of them, which would explain the eyes thing and maybe also the strangulation. Well, some of them looked like they were strangled, and also the broken ribs, because some people say it was common to kneel on people's chest as a torture.
Hmm.
I mean, that could explain a couple of things. I don't know if a normal weight person with a normal weight could cause such a fracture just by kneeling. I think they would have to jump on somebody's chest to cause that.
Um,
I mean, maybe they've done that. I don't know.
yeah, or maybe it was a big yeti, a big kneeling yeti.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, there are couple of other things maybe worth mentioning, like for example the cadaver spots who moved the persons. It could have been just people from the search party. There's another thing, a quote from the website, for example, the position of Doroshenko's body. I think Yuri was Doroshenko. Uh, was The position Doroshenko's body was found does not match the livor mortis spot on his back, so the cadaver spots. The bodies were laid down next to each other, so Yuri and Georgi, and they assume, well, I'm still quoting, points to the post-mortem manipulations. The scene looks orderly, no obscene games with the corpses that killers very often leave behind. This suggests that whoever was last in contact with the bodies felt compassion, pity, and respect towards the victims. They were not in, they were not the murderers, but their friends in distress that tried to make their deathbed somehow less horrible.
mm,
I don't know. I mean, I'm still having in mind the Blinov group that's still, to me personally, kind of suspicious because they just returned way earlier. Nobody was surprised about that fact. And
No, well, I
who
feel
knows, maybe
like,
they fought them.
but if they'd been in a fight, I think people would have noticed when they came back.
You're right, yeah.
But not necessarily. But
One
that
thing
is very
is,
suspicious to me as well, because if there are different agencies at work, maybe they sent that group along as a contingency, or actually part of the plan was that they were supposed to be following this other group because they were suspicious of them. Um,
mm,
yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
hmm,
and one thing is, I mean, like I said, there are a couple of other things that I didn't mention yet because they didn't fit anywhere. The Blinov group, for example, and also a couple of locals, they mentioned they've seen fireballs in the area, in the air, which wouldn't be very unusual back in the time that during that area. I told you that during that era, I told you it's that rocket race thing that they've had going. So maybe they tested something there. It's a common belief theory that there were some couple of tests. I mean, the fireballs also fuel like UFO theories and stuff like that. But it could be that maybe I don't know what it's called, parachute mines, I think. Uh, Apparently, according to one source, some of those were tested in that area. Those are like mines that were transported by parachute and just dropped off, where they would explode in the air. So maybe the hikers heard those explosions and saw. Because the Blinov group also said they saw those fireballs and it sounded like a thunder. I don't know, right after they saw the lights. So maybe they heard something or saw something, and Simeon, for example, maybe he, because he was wearing proper clothes, checked and went outside, and then he might have seen one of those fireballs coming very close and was like, "Get out as soon as possible." But
get to the shopper.
and then the other people just cut their way out as a
Yeah,
desperate attempt to get away because
yeah.
not all of them could fit through the entrance at the same time. But I don't know. Um, and that's why they ran, and maybe there were a couple more following. That's why they ran so far away. But surely they could just go back again after an hour when this whole thing is over. I can't imagine so many of them coming down
No.
that they just couldn't go back again to their tent and at least get some clothes.
Yeah, there has to have been some threat at the tent which prevented them from returning, and to me that just sounds like an enemy of some kind was either holding them captive in the tent, or had
Yeah.
and they escaped, or surprised them while they were sleeping, which is probably more likely, which is why they didn't have their shoes on and stuff. But some of them had one shoe on, so like, how does that happen?
Probably like,
They
oh
have some
shit,
kind of warning.
let's put on some clothes and
Yeah,
oh damn, I can't wait now. I gotta go right now. Something
yeah,
like that.
and run just with
What is
one.
weird is that there's a couple of things weird about Simeon Solotarev. When he left, he told his students. I can't quote it correctly because I didn't find the source again, but it's very. The students they reported that, so it's witness testimony somewhere. Um, Before he left, he told his students something like, "The world will, the whole world will hear about what we did on our hike," something like that.
Mm,
I'm like, yeah, he was right, but I don't think that's what he meant. The next
okay.
thing is that his tattoos were weird. Um, Nobody can remember him having them. In some pictures, you don't see tattoos on his right hand, for example. I mean, they could have been flips, but who knows? Um, there were rumors about a Simeon Solotarev, his exact name with his exact birth date, showing up in Israel right after the incident, also from Russia. But nobody really investigated if it was him. I mean, they questioned him apparently, but
Well, maybe he
nobody
was,
looked further into
and
it.
he joined later, didn't he? Maybe he was the
Yeah.
KGB agent, and um,
Mm.
everyone else died, and then they had to pretend that he died as well with somebody else's body. Maybe someone from the CIA they caught as well. I don't know.
That is quite interesting, but I'm not sure if that fits the other things because there's another thing. His body was, is it called exhumed?
Exhumed, yeah, from the grave.
Exhumed? Yeah. Yeah. And investigated, and there were DNA tests done if it was him, because they weren't sure. Now,
Okay.
the first one was negative, but there is a percentage of failure here because they only tested like the relatives from his maternal side, and those are only, I think, 80% accurate. So there's a 20% chance of failure. And then the second one, the second test, which they've done with a relative from the paternal side, that one was positive. But that just says that they were related, not that that was him. And some say that it might be his own brother, because the thing about his brother is he during the war he kind of disappeared, um, and people say he ran over to the Germans, and they think that Simeon might have possibly died in the war, but his brother came back instead of him. Or
So,
maybe I don't, it's so weird. I don't know what people are saying. I don't
so,
understand.
so where was James Bond in all of this? What was he up to? Because he could have solved this.
He was on holiday from his other weird stuff going on.
Um,
Now,
the more we talk about it, the more I think it must have been um, some kind of government plot, not plot, but some kind of intergovernment conflict. Because why would anybody kill a bunch of climbers? There's literally no reason to do it. Like, you wouldn't follow them up there and then try and rob them. And they also said they didn't take the money, so you wouldn't rob them. But there's no way you would go up. There's so many easier opportunities to rob people if that's what you were doing. So,
yeah,
and like, what are you going to steal? Some dirty old socks. So that's not what happened. They could have got in an argument with another group of hikers, but
mm.
how that has to escalate so far to create that kind of situation. Um,
Yeah, I could only see them arguing with each other. Um,
but
but how do all of them end up being killed? I mean, some of them,
yeah,
yeah, by hypothermia. The last one, maybe the one who caused all this, or the two who caused all this, might be the ones with hypothermia, and they couldn't make it back. But was it worth it to? I mean, I just could. I don't know. How do you get in an argument with another hiking group that you see maybe for a second somewhere in the distance,
yeah,
like, oh hey, yeah,
no,
um,
it doesn't happen. Uh, like, I
yeah.
think it was there was somebody must have followed them there for some reason, unless they'd done something with
It
the
could be the
logging camp or something with the hunter dude.
yeah,
But
the hunters maybe. I mean, those were described as friendly, but who knows? The one hunter that I mentioned, that Rempel guy, his name was noted in Sina's diary. Um, in his explanation was kind of weird. His witness testimony, because his explanation was that, oh, the hikers must have been thrown out by the wind out of their tents,
yeah, good one.
like kilometer away. How did
um,
they walk? I don't know.
yeah,
It's just, why didn't they get back? Like, oh shit, we gotta get back to our tent. We were thrown out.
yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't. It was the weirdest explanation. Another thing is that the weird color discoloration. Another thing is there was a similar case in the 70s. I think, did I mention that before? And they also had weird discolorations apparently. But in that case, it was somehow proven that in this area there were rockets sent to the sky to do some kind of weather manipulation, because there was just a bad cyclone and they tried to end that. I have no idea if that is a conspiracy theory, and I'm just eating it without questioning. um, because I mean, I'm saying that's proven. I have no idea. I didn't read anything about it other than a news article. I don't know. Maybe the experience with that kind of stuff. I don't know if that kind of stuff would cause skin discolorations, if they even were discolored, if it was natural, and the relatives just didn't know. Because I assume if you see your family member with weird corpse spots all over the body, frostbitten, and all that kind of stuff, I assume that you say, "Oh wow, they have a weird color," because corpses do look weird. They have weird colors.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing is that in the book, not in the website, it was mentioned that some victims had some U-shaped wounds, and there's a picture of Igor where you can kind of see on his cheek, and the author suggests that those wounds resemble wounds or bruises that are caused by a butt of a gun. I mean, I could
Yeah,
see that,
yeah,
sure, but
makes
um,
sense.
another thing is the fire in the cedar area. Yeah, that burned only for 90 minutes. I mean, you could find an explanation for that, but um, many dead matches next to the fire at the cedar tree were found, according to Evgeny Okishev, I don't know how to pronounce that, who supervised the investigation. He says the matches are only mentioned in the investigation report, which he believes more than the copy of the criminal case in Sverdlovsk, which didn't mention matches. So they probably tried to make a fire for quite a long time if there were so many dead matches around it.
Hmm. Well, that's pretty. That you can expect that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking maybe somebody was observing the group from the cedar tree where the fire was, and maybe the snow then belonged to them. And because the fire was behind the tree, so couldn't quite be seen from the tent. So maybe they tried to stay hidden and not alert anyone with the fire,
Yeah.
and then ordered them. That is a theory that I can believe in. If it was some spies, and I don't know, they would surely make the group come to their own shelter or where their tent was pitched. If they wanted to get them out of their tent, they possibly brought them to their own shelter, which might have been around the Cedar area. I don't know. And that's a theory that, I mean, that would make sense to shoot them somewhere where your tent is, you know?
Yes. Yeah. They wouldn't keep them there, and maybe they just cut a hole open in the side of the tent so that they could get everybody out quickly. So they were just like, right, let's just go this way, because
Yeah.
they don't want to go back to the tent. They don't want to have a base for them to go back to. So maybe they just sabotaged it
Yeah.
as they were leaving. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't
Oh,
part of an escape. It was just the captors
yeah.
actually doing it themselves, just to drag people out when they're tied up.
Mm, could be, yeah.
I don't know. I think
Well,
the more we talk about it, the more it does sound like some kind of spy conspiracy. Because yeah,
I don't
I
know.
don't understand how that many experienced climbers would die without
But is
some.
it really because of that radiation stuff? That radioactive material? I don't know.
I
Is
mean,
it really because of that? And why would they leave it if they needed that material?
yeah, I mean, it could be anything. It
You
could.
know, there's another thing about this case that I wanted to quickly mention is the region was closed for hundreds of miles in all directions for 3 years after the incident, and only government officials were allowed there, which is also kind of interesting.
Yeah,
um, there was some military cloth kind of thing found. Well, it wasn't. It was just some piece of cloth that wasn't torn, and people later couldn't identify it to the belongings of the hikers. And someone said it looked like um, something you put in your shoes to stay warm, but it's commonly used in the military. But that could have just belonged to Simeon, maybe, because it was in the military.
yeah. Or any of them
Um,
could have been using ex-military gear. Just could have just picked it up because it was suitable for what they were doing.
yeah. I want to quickly mention the photos on Simeon's camera that were underdeveloped, and somebody actually made the effort and just tried to develop them and look and see if they find something. They say they just found some weird differences it was all just black, you know, but there was some differences in the black. And the thing is, though, that to point that out and to make that more visible, they highlighted that area and made it kind of white. And some people didn't know that and thought that those objects that they photographed were actually white. And now there's theories out there about angels and demons, and they appear in the
Brilliant,
picture.
brilliant.
Brilliant, I know. The easiest explanation. Oh, it must be demons.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not gonna. You know, I believe what you want is always what I'm saying, but I just can't. I'm sorry.
no,
There's a picture also the last picture on one of the cameras that was um a weird picture where you can just see some glowy things. Um, that can kind of be debunked with the because they assume that the examiners later on they tried to take the film out of the camera and accidentally took one last picture. Could be the reason.
Yes, maybe.
Uh, yeah, so I mentioned the Blinov group. Da da da. Um, but something else that's interesting is Ludmila's brother was interviewed in 2013, and he says apparently the search parties were prohibited to searching in certain places.
Um, for safety reasons, or
That's the question. I don't know. He didn't mention. He just said the search parties were told do not go there and
yeah.
there and there.
Okay, that doesn't sound. I mean, because if there's any mountain in the world today, the park rangers would say, look, don't go to these areas because it's not safe, or don't do this because of avalanche risks or whatever. So that could be a potential reason, right? But that does
Yeah,
sound a bit suspicious. Like, if you're
yeah, it could
searching
be
for
both.
someone, you probably have to go to areas if you can't find them.
Yeah.
Don't go to this
I
area
just
where they're
wanna
testing.
yeah, I just wanna quickly mention some of the more popular theories also mentioned on the website. I won't go into detail for all of them. Just yeah, the paradoxical undressing, we've discussed that. I think yeah, some of them maybe, definitely not all of them. Because not all of them died of hypothermia and didn't explain all of the injuries.
Yeah, that's
Then
true.
I think we don't have to mention the Yeti. Some people might say that's unfair. You have to take that into consideration as well. I think the existence of a Yeti or a Bigfoot was never proven at any time, so I don't have any reason to believe that.
No, me
So
neither.
no, no from me. Then there's another thing. Infrasound is one theory. I can't describe it properly now because I don't have all the info. But apparently, infrasound that causes people to kind of go crazy and be weird. But that was tested and it doesn't. It it can make people act weird, but not all of the people. It's just that it doesn't work in all of the people. That was studied, and so I think it's weird that of nine hikers all act weird and because of infrasound. And I would also not know where that comes from. Maybe from military bases, but I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
So yeah, the KGB, I've mentioned that, or CIA, something like spy agencies and that kind of stuff. There's a theory that says hikers were mistaken for prisoners from a gulag nearby. That could be, um, but I can't remember. I'm very sorry. There is some mentioning of why that uh, isn't true. I think because in that area only two prisoners escaped,
I
and that
mean,
wasn't around that time. And also, why would they climb a mountain? But I don't know.
I
Wouldn't they
don't
have
think.
different clothing?
I think if you were looking for prisoners and
Mm,
you would know what they look like, and it would be very easy for, and also it would be resolved quite peacefully. I think if
mm.
they believed that they were someone in their party was prisoners, I imagine the two that they thought were the prisoners would say, "Okay, well, we'll come with you and prove that we're not prisoners," rather than lose their
Yeah.
lives and all this sort of stuff. I think.
I mean, they could have been afraid, but they would have probably still just taken them back to the prison camp. Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, like I said, different times. Maybe they weren't that friendly
yeah.
and patient. But I agree with you. I also don't think that that's the cause. Another thing is the Menzi. I've told you about that, but I think um, since they have a history of being very peaceful, I don't believe that. The shrooms, they must have looked for the shrooms in the snow to find some.
Yeah,
I don't think so. Maybe they've brought some along. Sure, it could be possible, but still, I don't think they were so irresponsible.
no.
Um, and also doesn't explain all of the stuff. I mean, sure, maybe if you fall very weirdly, I don't know.
No.
An avalanche has been pretty much disproven because, pretty much debunked because the delicate items in the tent were very untouched. They were not broken or anything, and things still standing upright. And
I feel like an avalanche would cause them much more serious injuries as well. Um, I don't know much about avalanches, obviously, but
not the eyes though.
oh no, yeah, your eyes wouldn't fall out, no. uh, but I think if it was an avalanche, I think it would be more obvious by looking at the bodies that they've been in an avalanche. So,
Yeah, I mean, it
um,
wasn't an area where avalanches were that common. It wasn't that steep of a slope as well.
mm,
It still could be, but there were no reports of an avalanche or could still happen. It just didn't look like an avalanche, is what people said. I
Yeah.
can't just believe what they say, obviously. And they were experienced outdoorsmen, probably more experienced than I am, and know more about avalanches. Um, yeah, there's a UFO theory. I don't know. Like I said, I mean that's very far fetched. I can imagine that maybe there is a living being somewhere in the galaxy, thousands of light years away, but those could easily just be like bacteria, like living beings. So
Yeah.
I I think it's very unlikely that there are actually aliens that are so advanced, much more advanced, that they can come to us and then just torture some innocent hikers on a mountain, just because.
Take
I
their
think
own
that's
route.
very far fetched, and I mean I'm not a complete enemy of alien theories. I think it is quite possible that
Well,
there might be a planet out there with the right conditions for life to evolve or to develop. But I think, um, I don't know. I think it's
I
quite
feel
far fetched,
exactly
like
the
I said.
same. You know, it's
Yeah,
I don't, but often whenever I hear a alien uh, conspiracy, I just don't pay any attention to it. But the actual idea that we are the only things that have evolved like this in the whole universe just seems a little bit strange. Maybe not
yeah,
impossible, but yeah, there's so much about space. It's just mind blowing. So
yeah. It could be, couldn't be, but it's quite unlikely that they can come to us. It's just that's such a difficult thing.
and
Maybe they could,
if they
but
did come down, they'd go to Disney World or something fun. They wouldn't go to. They wouldn't go
like,
to.
wow, you have Disney World.
They wouldn't go to the top of a mountain in the snow and then
Wow,
just.
Six Flags! I always wanted to try that. I've been observing that for years from my UFO. I always wanted to go down that one.
And they're like, "No, Gary, I'm sorry, we're not going. We're not going to Disney World. We're going to this random tent in the mountains here on the
Yeah.
map. This is where we're going." Yeah, I mean that's me being silly again, obviously, but um, yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't seem plausible here.
agreed. Another one is secret launches. Like I don't know if a rocket can cause all of that stuff. Wouldn't there be branches kind of burned? Maybe some trees. I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. Maybe something crashed. But how would they so quickly remove all of that stuff? I don't know. I wouldn't there be some kind of traces left? I don't know enough about how do you clean a crime scene where a rocket came down.
I know, and in the snow as well. It's like in those conditions, it would have been horrible conditions to be able to do anything. Um, how do you clean something up and then leave no tracks behind?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's another one, like you were joking, I told you, but there's another one with a teleportation experiment. But this theory only came up because of a recent horror movie about this whole thing, and that also had some demonic forces in that movie. So I'm not going to even go into this further because, like I said, so far fetched.
Yeah.
Nothing directly points into a paranormal direction like that. So I'm not going to even bother. Um, Sorry to all the paranormal fans out there. Call me ignorant. I just don't believe in that stuff. Sorry.
No.
Lightning strike or ball lightning. Lightning maybe could maybe explain some burns, and that would also explain some fireball sightings. Ball lightnings are very weird, and they could have maybe witnessed something like that and ran because they were so afraid. Um, but then for another, ball lightnings are very rare. For another one to come down and then uh, don't explode, right? To just cause such a damage on the hikers in a completely different area then seems so unlikely. And
Yeah.
also, there would also be some burn marks on trees, or why would they have crushed ribs? Were they thrown through the air by electricity? I don't understand. I
No.
don't know enough about.
I don't think that's plausible either because they ultimately died out in the wilderness, and whatever happened to them,
Yeah,
has to have been a reason why they couldn't go back and get their clothes. And um, being like a lightning bolt doesn't actually say that to me.
yeah.
I mean, if the tent was on fire and not even there anymore, then they wouldn't be able to go back. But it was still there, and their stuff was still in it, so that doesn't make any sense to me. They would
Yeah,
have run
and
away and then decided, right, well, we either die here or we go back and try and get our clothes. So
exactly, yeah. Now, there's a stove again. People have an issue with that stove, which isn't very sure if that what is even assembled or not. There were nothing was burnt or anything. There was unburned Kimball in the stove, so they probably didn't use it yet that night. And also, yeah, if it was the fumes, I don't think they would cut up their tent. I think they would just open the tent and vent it and maybe go outside through the front, cover their mouths, and like crawl outside. I don't think, and also they could just easily go back when the danger is over, and that would
exactly,
be quickly. Now, so
their
I don't
whole
think we
life,
have to go into detail.
their whole lives are
Hmm?
in there. They would put the fire out as best they could and salvage what they could,
If
and
it
you
was
would,
a fire,
yeah, and you would see a fire and remains of it anyway.
yeah, and if it was just the fumes like smoke poisoning, it still doesn't explain why they just left everything behind and went
No,
so far.
no.
Now, some people say gravity fluctuation, and they say um, some physicist even tries to explain that. I think nobody ever witnessed that. I think. I mean, they. Um, I'm not a physicist. I can't say anything about that. But they explain it like that. They say the hikers suddenly started floating because of lack of gravity in their tents, and therefore the tent ripped open. That's why they were floating outside and so far away, and then just crashed. And you know, I mean, at some point it's getting a bit ridiculous. I just wanted to mention it. Then there's something called katabatic wind that is proven that those things exist in weird conditions, and that causes some kind of can cause some kind of confusion. But I don't know enough about it to really discuss it right now. It's like a whirlwind of kind of wind. Imagine like a whirlpool kind of thing, but not really a
Yeah,
tornado or something, and that can cause confusion. Don't know.
yeah.
Some people say a wolverine, so an animal might have come into the tent, and also they, like skunks, they have like a weird stench, and that caused people to run away and then remove their clothes because they were stinking so much. But I think they would just pinch their nose closed and like try to breathe through their mouth maybe and not remove their clothes
There's no
if
way. Yeah.
they were so valuable to them in the cold. That I don't think they were that stupid.
Wolverines are
Um,
very aggressive, but I think if it came to the point, it's the same thing I said before. They would go back to their tent. Um,
Yeah. Also, I mean, they're quite dangerous, but I think that at least somebody would have maybe tried to get that thing to yeet the thing out of the tent, or stab it with a knife or something, maybe.
they're very
Or
dangerous. Yeah, they're very dangerous and aggressive, but
I
it's
don't
not.
know how
It's
aggressive.
not. I don't think it's enough to kill 9 people.
No, no,
And
no. Maybe
like,
they could it could have scared them away, but
mm,
they surely would maybe come back at us at a
absolutely,
certain point, or
because
or even I don't know. That wouldn't cause them to just fall and stumble everywhere, and all of them dying of massive fractures and stuff like that.
yeah, they know that. Yeah, they're experienced enough to know that they can't survive without their tent and gear, so they would have
Yeah.
made that happen.
Now, here's two theories that I think are the most interesting and maybe also most possible. One is methanol poisoning. So some hikers had methanol, so like medicine alcohol, to disinfect wounds. Maybe they had often they brought some of that along, and in the tent there was a bottle found with an alcohol kind of smell inside, but it couldn't. Nobody could tell if it was vodka or maybe methanol. And so, if they might have confused it and drank from the methanol, if you drink too much of that stuff, it could cause blindness.
But
And
isn't it like 80% alcohol or something? Or even
yeah, and
100%
that
in
stuff,
some cases.
yeah, and that could cause blindness. So, if they're blind, I don't know if they would leave the tent. Maybe they were so confused from so much alcohol or methanol. I don't know how that works. Or maybe yeah, that doesn't explain why they ripped their tent open, to be honest, but that could explain why they just they just went, I don't know,
They
in a
all drank.
direction, couldn't
They
find
all
back.
they all drank it.
And maybe yeah, that's another thing. Maybe somebody just, the theory is maybe somebody put it in the food to lighten the mood. I don't think somebody would
Uh,
do that,
uh,
to be honest. Um,
no,
it's like roofing someone.
it's extremely dangerous to ingest that.
I know, and maybe they thought it was vodka. Could
Yeah,
be.
yeah,
I mean, that would explain why they were walking down the slope in an orderly manner, also next to each other. That could be explained by that. Also, why they tried desperately to make a fire somewhere and kind of maybe taking the fresh branches by accident because they didn't know. But I think you must feel it if it's dry or a new one, right? A young one.
yeah.
Anyway, I mean, it explains some aspects. Again, maybe they fell because they couldn't see. Um, but not all of it, you know? I don't know. And the other one, the last explanation is an altercation on the past. And I don't know the circumstances, of course, but that's what I believe. And I think there was some sort of fight. Um, don't know with whom, don't know why, but I think they fought someone because otherwise, I can't explain otherwise the wounds on their knuckles. To me, that's pretty clear. So I'm going with they had a fight with someone. I don't want to go as far and speculate if it was secret agencies or military, but probably definitely human caused and a fight. So it's also a simple explanation, the best
I
kind of explanation,
yeah.
in my opinion.
I mean, I can't see it being anything other than human cause. Um,
Yeah.
it's just very strange if it was a fight that nobody else was killed. So they didn't actually kill anybody on the other side. Which,
Yeah.
if you're a normal
They mu-
person going on a hike, it's very difficult to, like. It's not they're gonna suddenly decide that they can kill somebody. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it's very odd that they all died and nobody else did. If there was a big fight, but
Mhm.
at the same time, it depends what weapons the other people. Well, there were no weapon injuries, so I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was some kind of altercation with another group, but it had to be a big group because there are 9 of them.
Yeah.
Um,
And they must have had some kind of advantage over them, or maybe, I mean, if I think it would even be enough if it was a fight and the tent was cut open and they were being by the tent and just multiple people and they just couldn't go back there because they knew they would get killed, and so they tried to survive outside and tried to set up a den to sleep there and get some shelter, or maybe at least stay warm until the next day. um I don't know, but I not everything can be explained by that, but most of it can be, depending on the circumstances, of course.
yeah,
And
because
yeah,
if they were attacked and they did run away, the attackers would probably just start a fire near their tent and just because they would have seen them running off without any clothes and any gear.
hmm
They would have just probably started a fire near their tent and just said, "Well, they're going to die out there, so we can just
I
wait
mean,
them
there was
out."
no fire near the tent, but they had the tent heater.
That's true.
I
Yeah,
mean, the tent was ripped, but they could have just have their own tent nearby.
yeah,
Nobody would have found that.
yeah. So that seems like the most likely explanation, but it's very so many the strange details that I don't understand is the eyes
Yeah,
because I also don't understand why they were attacked. There's no kind of explanation as to that at all because it's
yeah.
not.
Unless some one of them was sketchy, but I don't know which one. I think
Mm,
I don't want to accuse someone. I think Simeon was the only one that didn't quite fit in the group because he was the oldest and had some war experience, and also the tattoos are kind of off. So there are some suspicious things about him, but mm, I don't know. I mean, there are some things also about I think Alexander, because he was apparently in some kind of elite group, hiking group that nobody could get into, something like that. And people believe he maybe might have been something like a spy. There is way more info on the website on this topic, and so obviously I couldn't mention all of it. Um, Maybe it has something to do with all that radioactive material because some of them worked in plants. So maybe that's why they've been attacked, or maybe it was just, yeah, I don't know, maybe a disagreement with somebody earlier on, but why would they follow them just because of a disagreement and kill
yeah,
all of them?
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's and also, I mean, what I always say is don't underestimate the psychological aspect. I mean, uh, there have been so many cases where people do unusual things, And just because we know the hikers and their behavior and stuff like that, doesn't mean we know what they would do in certain situations. And there are just so many so many aspects and don't know the English word. Variables?
Oh, variables. Yeah.
Variables, thank you.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
Um, that could influence behavior, and since we don't know all of them, we would have to do massive research to explain why people have done certain things, and I don't know. Yeah, it's. But like I said, don't underestimate that just because something doesn't seem very logical. I mean, people do desperate things sometimes, and also sometimes people start fighting without apparent reason, and even though they might have never shown that behavior before, could be. So I don't think we can. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I don't know. There's never going to be a. Uh,
a
it's never going to be
conclusion.
solved,
No,
probably.
which is a shame. It would be interesting, really interesting to find out exactly what happened. But it's
And I
definitely
mean,
that's a mystery for sure.
there's a rumor that, I mean, it sounds very adventurous and a bit like in a movie, but there is rumors that there is an actual, like, a classified file, like actually tagged top secret somewhere that nobody has ever seen. And since the case is reopened now since February, maybe some details might show up, but who knows? I mean, um I think the lawyer um, that's working on the case right now, I think he already said, well, those were natural causes. He's pretty much certain, and so I don't get my hopes up too high if that's the investigating lawyer, or I don't know. But yeah,
Hmm.
I do still hope that we get more information because it's very interesting. I think their families, the families that are still, the relatives that are still alive, they deserve to know, obviously. And yeah,
I
and
mean,
I'm
if
just a curious person. I want to know as well.
yeah, if there was any kind of conspiracy, I don't think it would come out because even if the government today uncovered a conspiracy from uh, the 50s, they they wouldn't necessarily want to make it known to everybody because it just reflects badly on Russia or America or whoever was involved.
Well, in some cases, such files have been published recently or in the past years or decades. So
Hmm.
it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Even if it made everyone look bad, some things were published according to sources that, like, I don't know, wherever I've read it, maybe on the website, or I don't know where, probably the website.
Yeah.
And don't know for sure. I'm just quoting the website here, and so yeah, I don't think it's impossible that things like that eventually will surface, but we don't know when. Well, I'm pretty much done with everything. I'm very thankful that you listened to all of this patiently, and also thanks for getting so involved as well, and making theories, and thinking about it, and
Well, thank you
just
for
always
sharing
interesting
it.
to discuss.
Thank you for sharing it with me. I had no
Well,
idea, like, because you mentioned to me, obviously, you wanted to do this. I thought it was going to be some, like, serial killer type murder mystery type thing that was never solved. So I
mhm.
was quite pleasantly relieved to see this is because it was kind of like listening to a film, a lot of it.
Oh, nice. That's a
Right.
compliment.
Well, like a lot of all of the details and the journey they took and the characters in it. I could very much see this kind of story becoming a film. Um, but
Well, there are
unfortunately,
films out there, but they're a bit questionable.
oh, have they made films on this exact story? Have they?
Yeah, I told you about this one horror film that suggests
Oh,
demonic stuff
I
and
just thought it was a horror story on the similar kind of themes. I didn't realize it was referring to the same
it
situation.
was that, yeah, it was that
Oh, I see.
situation.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I've done it somehow justice, and to also clarify a few things, because there are unfortunately many YouTubers out there as well. I mean, I get it; they want to entertain, and probably my story was sometimes a bit boring because I cited so many facts, and that can get boring sometimes. Um, uh, but still, I personally, I don't want to cause more misinformation. For example, the thing with the tongue is always I don't know, it's always mentioned, and people make a huge mystery of it, even though it's been proven that that was post-mortem. You know, it just happens when you're lying in a creek for so long. um, your body obviously is not going to stay the same, and there's still enough mysterious stuff going on, like the eyes, for example. And I personally, I just want to stick to the facts and things we know for certain. And so I hope I've done it justice. It's just so much more information, and like I said in the beginning, check out the official website. There's just so much more, and it's constantly being updated. Yeah, I had fun researching, but I'm also kind of glad that I can stop now.
Well, you can't stop now. You haven't got to the bottom of it yet, Detective Pikachu. We need next week.
I scratched the surface, I think.
Next week, I want an interview with KGB.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm gonna write them today. I'm gonna write an email. Hey
Hello,
KGB.
this is this is Jane from Project Spotlight investigating the 90. They're like, oh god, they're onto us.
Oh yeah. Um, you better hand that out now.
Yeah.
We delete.
Well.
Give them the files.
No, well, thank you
I
for
appreciate
sharing
it.
that with me, Jane. Hopefully, everybody else enjoyed it. It's
Yeah, I hope so too. It's very yeah, it's very unusual for a channel, something very different. And if you're only here for to listen to, I don't know who I'm talking to, obviously, because those who made it that far, they were obviously interested. In case you just skipped to the end and hear that and didn't listen. If you're just interested in games and movies and only listen to a podcast because of that, I'm sorry. Um, to
yeah.
disappoint you this time. I hope you could enjoy it nonetheless. Yeah, and maybe we're doing that again at some point, something similar, maybe shorter, for my sanity's sake.
Yeah.
Because I had fun. I'd like to do that again, and I'd like to know, maybe the few who made it that far could maybe comment below and let me know if they liked it, or maybe they tell me to shut up and never do that again. That's fine as well. I prefer the nicer, nicer message,
I'm sure you'll get
but
nicer
still.
messages. But
But
yeah,
I'm open for constructive criticism, of course.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, as we always are, on anything we talk about on the show. So
Okay, well now I'm hungry. I gotta eat something now.
yeah, I mean, you're hungry. It's 2 a.m. for me.
Wow,
So
sorry.
no, it's all right. Thank you to everybody for listening. Then we will leave
Thanks
it there,
everyone.
and we'd love to hear your theories. And if anybody knows the truth, let us know. If there's
Yes,
anybody out
please.
there, or if there's any aliens out there that know what you did, then we'd love to hear from you. So
Yeah, but don't scare us. Just be no, don't spook us. Don't come around a corner or I don't know, float down from a UFO. That might scare us.
just send us an email. That would be best.
Yeah. Hey there, aliens speaking. Just wanted to let you know. Sorry, it was us. It was an accident.
it was a,
Okay.
it was just a big misunderstanding. We're so sorry.
Yeah, Gary dropped some material. I told him not to. He didn't listen.
All
Typical
right.
Gary. Right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for listening, everybody, and we will see you next time.